Dobar dan, dragi gledatelji. Nedavno smo organizirali našu prvu konferenciju pod imenom Business and Gaming. Imali smo vrlo zanimljive i poznate goste iz gaming industrije, te vam u sljedećih nekoliko epizoda donosimo specijal AFK showa sa navedene konferencije. U prvoj epizodi vam donosimo Rajeev Girdhara, Global Operations direktora u Wargamingu.
Kao što smo rekli, igre, ozbiljna stvar, velika stvar. Wargaming, jedan od najpoznatijih europskih proizvođača videoigara, a najveći hit igra je World of Tanks. Tu su i World of Warships i World of Warplanes, koji privlače stotine tisuća ljudi za računala. Imao sam priliku i neuspješno u tome imati jednu epizodu, nebitno. Wargamingov prihod za 2021. procjenjuje se na 1,1 milijardu dolara, a zapošljavao je preko 1750 ljudi globalno. Dakle, nevjerojatne cifre. Poznati su kao i veliki donatori mnogim muzejima koji se bave očuvanjem ratne tehnike, vrlo logično. Budući da je Wargaming tvrtka iz Bjelorusije, a s obzirom na trenutnu situaciju, sve o game developmentu u kriznim situacijama, dakle to je naziv našeg panela koji slijedi, saznaćemo od Rajeeva Girdhara, koji je Global Operation Director Wargaminga. S njima će razgovarati Vedranom Jelavić, voditelj i producent Gamehub TV-a, also known as Veco Kazna, evropski je prvak u igri World of Tanks. Jedan od onih koji ću citirati kad me pitaju šta radiš petkom, reći ću pa sportaš sam, kao što znam govoriti, kao što i sam Veco Kazna kaže. Znao sam do sad govoriti pa ja sam isto sportaš. Ovo mi je sad totalno jasno da smo svi sportaši koji gejmamo. Znači, želim dobrodošlicu Veci i Rajeevu. Mr. Rajeev and Vedran, please join us on stage. Molim jedan pljesak za njih.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Hello, Rajeev.
Thank you.
How are you feeling?
Great. Let's go.
I just need to move this mic a little bit closer like this. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Let's start opening. Let's open this topic with the biggest news that Wargaming did, especially in this region now, which was opening new offices in Belgrade and Warsaw, specifically Belgrade. So opening those new offices, how did you go with the strategy? How did the situation affect your business plans? What were the main difficulties opening the office in Belgrade? I mean, Wargaming is known to have offices all over the world, so it's not something new to you. But can you tell us something more about your relocation strategies?
Yeah, so when the conflict broke, we had to first of all prioritize the safety of our business and employees at the same time. Mm-hmm. We needed to find a location which is stable and has good support to open the business quickly, because when you're trying to set up a business in a new country or a city, sometimes it can be complicated from the government side, from the agency side. So for us, it was very important that we find such location that can help us to go faster. Visa was a problem. So we needed to find a place where our affected employees from the conflict region could get the visa really fast or require least paperwork. Mm-hmm. So these were the things we were always considering. So when we look at the options, I think Serbia was reasonably good, and we chose that location and then started to build a strategy on like when and how and who. So
Serbia is basically the one of the biggest market here in the region for gaming. So what was the talent pool in the region, especially in Serbia? And
we are very pleasantly surprised that the talent pool is quite varied and good. We have been able to hire really fast. So I would say that we started from zero last year, and now we have 400 people in a matter of 8-9 months. That goes a lot about like how varied and how good the talent pool is. We do have some challenges around certain roles which are very specific to our game, which is 3D modeling. it's not just 3D modeling a building or a car. It's 3D modeling an old tank or ships, which are very specific. So these are the roles that are a bit more challenging to fill in. We are struggling there a bit. But overall, from the DevOps, from QA, from programming, from artists, we have been able to hire pretty nicely.
Do you have some kind of lectures for the 3D modeling business? Because it's so specific?
We used
some
to do
kind of development plan for the...
So we used to do it. So we heavily engaged in what we call Wargaming Forge, where we invite the students from different universities who are graduating or about to graduate, even from high schools, to come and sit with us and see what it takes to work in a gaming industry. Mm-hmm. And we would actually collaborate with a lot of universities where the emphasis will be on let's say the more challenging part of hiring. So we will show them, what we need in the future talent pool, and the universities will always try to adjust their curriculum so that, when the students graduate, they have a much higher chance to be hired.
Okay, so you mentioned already 400 employees, even more than 400?
Yeah, I think it's counting every day, it's going more.
Yeah, so what were the roles that were the most looked for when people were applying for the jobs? Any specific roles?
I think there are a lot of roles on the back end and let's say the client side where there are programming involved. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of roles we filled quickly were Python, things related to art. The art and creative part is surprisingly good as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we go back to a little bit to Wargaming Forge? Can you tell us more about, is that, I'm going to call it an education system, is that fine? Yeah.
Well, education, training, because...
Training, yeah, training.
So we have over course of, since 2017, 500 students, I would call them, okay, participated in that. And out of that, we had 60 interns. To give you an idea, 90% of the interns are hired by Wargaming. So the success rate of those interns to be hired is really high. So we run this program in all the major European cities. Like we have it in Prague, we have it in Vilnius, we have it in Belgrade, and a couple of more cities. So we have that running specifically in European office, where collaborating with the university is much more easier and more productive. I don't know if I can.
Does it?
No.
Does it work? Does it work?
No. I have a slide for it, but it doesn't work. Yeah, so it's a very high quality program for us, where we absorb the students, where they stay with us for 3 to 6 months. Mm-hmm. We have over 180 mentors in the company that are training and teaching and making sure that people who come as part of Wargaming Forge find their time worthwhile and they learn something from.
So you were there in Belgrade when you opened offices. You were hiring those people as well, right?
Yes. Okay, now it works.
It works. Okay.
I will quickly
Can we
go through.
Quickly go back to.
And I broke it.
Nah, you did.
It's
fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
So here, this is the Wargaming Forge part, where you can see we are in Prague, Vilnius, Nicosia, which is in Cyprus, and Belgrade. And you can see we started in 2017, and we have over 510 students who have participated so far. Out of them, 56 were interns, and a 90% hiring rate.
Yeah, that's really impressive. You're based in Prague. In yes. Prague office. Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit more about what's the difference in Prague and a new open office in Belgrade or Warsaw?
So Prague is 5 years old. Mm-hmm. It was established on, let's say, different needs, and Belgrade is very much focused towards World of Warships. That's where I would say 80-90% of the employees are working for. Okay. But in Prague, there are people from all the different teams, different products. So the needs of the office are slightly different. And Obviously, we have lots of people who relocated to Belgrade, and then we have a mix of local talent. In Prague, it's much more varied, so there are people from all over the world that are currently working in the office.
Okay. How is Wargaming contributing to develop specific competencies on the local job market? Do you have something to comment?
I think it's the forge that we work with, specifically with the universities and the local market, because we believe that we have to train our future employees, and it's very specific in some cases. So we do work with universities, and we work with Wargaming Forge, and end up training a lot of students and people.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about your main titles. The most popular one is World of Tanks. World of Warships as well is original and really popular. From my experience, when I was a World of Tanks player, that game was updated on a, I'm gonna say, not a monthly basis, but on a weekly basis. World of Warships as well, right? World of Warplanes as well.
Yes.
How was that? How did you deal with that when you had to move shut down some offices and open new ones? How was that?
So World of Warships updates every 4 weeks.
4 weeks.
Every 4 weeks, and World of Tanks, I think, a bit longer, but they have a heavier content drop. We plan our roadmap 2 years in advance, and we already have content for what we are going to produce and release 6 months, 8 months in advance. So when the news broke out, we knew that whatever we have in pipeline for 6 months, when it will go out. So there was not a big impact on the critical core things that were expected out of the content pipeline for both games. So that was managed by our planning, and I think what we needed to plan around was more about the services that are supporting the game, because our games are 24/7. They require a heavy server infrastructure that needed to be considered more heavily from our side. The content itself, what goes into the game, was okay, but the supporting services, the web, e-commerce, CRM, all these services were more critical that they needed to run, which were run by the people. So that's where I think we came up with the plan.
Well, so basically there is no crisis, I should put it in that way. In Wargaming, you always deal with, you're such a big ongoing ball that there's not an issue or a problem that can move you off your way, if you know what I mean.
Yes,
because you always have a way to deal with oncoming problems.
I would like to assume so, but you never know what happens in the world.
Then you hide it really good, I mean.
Yes, I look. We can only speak by results. If you look at what our players faced, or our players did not see at all any crisis, that's a good result for us, that they didn't feel that we missed a patch or there's a lack of content or anything as such. They didn't complain about anything. So from that part, we did pretty fine. But internally, I can tell you there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. Of course.
Yeah, we don't see that. We don't see that.
Which is fine and which is fair, I think.
One question I wanted to ask you. Wargaming is known to work with a lot of museums, historians, because it's a game with past vehicles and past warfare. How is that now? Is there any difference now in your partnerships with those kind of museums and those kind of people who are working in those?
No, because as
sectors?
you said, we are mostly game about history. We don't have anything to do with what's happening in the world in terms of the things that are used in the conflict for modern warfare. We don't have such, let's say, armament, vehicles, ships. Our our vehicles and ships are from 1910s to 1950s, and that's about it. So when we work with the museums who are also living in the same, let's say, legacy, we work very well. They understand the fact that they understand the fact that the game is all about the naval engineering, what went behind creating those big steely giants things. They understand that we are trying to educate the people about the history, and it sounds sad, but we're trying to educate not to repeat the same stuff that happened in about 80, 90 years ago, but we see it in some way. So we have a common mission, and they understand it. And I think one of the biggest proofs is that we opened a dedicated section in Den Helder in Holland, Netherlands, where we had an old section in November, which is after all things that happened. So it shows that people and museums are understanding of the fact that what's our cultural heritage, what's our social responsibility. We are not directly involved with anything that is happening, and our mission and statement is completely different.
Okay. How long does it take to model a warship?
Let me see if I can find that slide.
Yeah, one of the most interesting things about about Wargaming and the museums and working with them is that one ship, I always forget its name, the one ship that is one of a kind in the world.
USS Batfish, yes.
Yes.
We are talking about, okay, if you're talking about our social responsibility, like, we have raised so much money for different reasons and different good causes and different vehicles and different restorations. Like, we have literally pulled out sunk airplanes or restored ships that were about to be what we call what's the word for it? Crushed. And we have, so that's one part. Then there is the whole veteran part in the United States, where it's a big thing. We support the mental well-being of the vets there. We work with different charities related to the children and their well-being. We raised $400,000 for USS Texas, which was about to be scrapped. Now it's the oldest and one of its kind. It's a dreadnought from that way that we contributed, and it's not just us. We created a campaign where Wargaming puts the money and players put the money, and both come together and donate it to the charity.
To the charity.
So yeah, our players are very passionate about preserving the history, and it shows. All these numbers speak.
Yeah, if they're at least half of what I am for tanks, then they're probably really into it.
Our players are really passionate about the history.
When we were at charities, how does that work? How does that affect your business? You have a lot of charities. I also know that you have a presentation of some kind of them, some examples of what you did. Can you tell us more about how does it affect the business plan? How do you market yourself with it?
So it's all about coming a relatable good cause. Whenever we are in a situation where, a lot of these ideas were given to us by players. So a lot of players just come to us and talk about like, hey, we heard this ship is gonna get scrapped, or this tank needs restoration, or it will be scrapped. And it's all about understanding that, can we do it in a meaningful way? We don't want to do it just for the sake of it. We want to do it so that it makes an impact. And once we analyze that, okay, if we do it, how long will it take? Because sometimes you are on the clock. Sometimes you don't have enough time. If we want to do it with the players, what can we do so that players also feel part of the whole, let's say, charity process? So there are different parameters and combinations that we consider, and it also depends on the charity if they are also open for such integration, because sometimes it requires that, okay, we're going to integrate and collaborate with you in this and this way, but they don't have let's say, a website that could do that. We had a case where we collaborated with the site and the site crashed.
Ouch.
because they were not ready for so many people coming and trying to donate.
Okay. You touched on mental well-being with the veterans. How does Wargaming show? I mean, I know that most of the players are a little bit older. The community is a little bit older in Wargaming.
Try to show
Games such as World of Tanks and World of Warships. But how to show the younger generations that, because they are playing a war game, a simulation war game, how to show them that war is actually not good? How to educate them about it?
So our game is Peggy 7.
Okay.
That already shows you that we don't have any blood or gore or any humans or anything. The game is about steely giants trying to explode each other. How we do it is more about like the whole brilliance about naval engineering, because these things are huge and they are heavy, and then they deal a lot of damage in terms of, you know, like shells flying around. So we try to showcase this part to all kind of ages and all kind of player types. We don't show that it's about killing or it's about, you know, destroying different, let's say, factions or things like those. It's more about educating them that the game is about history, this ship, because a lot of our vehicles or ships in the game are historically accurate to the last screw. I can safely say that World of Warships is the biggest floating naval museum in the world, because the amount of content and ships there is in the game is unique and is accurate, at least for the ones that existed. I mean, there are lots of ships that we created because of our imagination. I can go to this slide, which is the upcoming destroyer we are adding called Split. And it has an interesting story. You should go and read like how many times the ship was tried to be destroyed, but it was always pulled back, tried to continue the construction by Italians, and they stopped and then came back. And
is that excuse me, is that a premium one? Or is it?
No, it will be, it's a tech tree ship.
It's a tech tree. It's going to be a tech tree.
It's a tech tree ship.
Okay.
So it will be added in summer under the Kingdom of Yugoslavia's flag, part of the Yugoslavian Navy. And so, for example, this ship took us, a ship of this size will take us roughly 3 to 4 months, or sometimes even more, to just model it, just one ship. And we will add 9 of them or 10 of them.
We talked about that. We talked about that unique position. So that was what you were talking about when they need to 3D model it and everything. Yeah, that sounds.
Because it's accurate to the very last detail, and our players get upset when it's not accurate.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah,
yes, they're very touchy about it's historically not in this way.
Yeah,
it should be this way, and then we have to explain them that this is our vision, because this ship is our vision on how it would have been in 1939, even though the ship was finished in 1957 or something, I don't remember. But this is our vision on how it would look if it was 1939.
Yeah. So, I love the fact that you're working with your community on a daily basis. I, for a fact, know that from Wargaming, from the World of Tanks side, from the, well, let's say from the esports side. While we're at the community of players, there was a little bit of a setback with CIS players. How did you deal now when in this situation? How did you deal with the players who couldn't play that game anymore, World of Tanks or World of Warships on a CIS servers? How did you deal with those kind of problems?
When we split the business, we needed, one of the first thing we thought about, as you said, like what will our players do? How will our players play the game? So we created a system where every player was given a choice to stay with Wargaming and move to the European cluster, or stay with the subsidiary that was created in Russia and Belarus and stay with them. The players had to make a conscious choice. There was no way they could skip this part. When you start the game first time after the and it was started in September, you must make this choice. I want to stay with Wargaming and move to European, and all your account will be transferred, everything will be there, or I want to stay where I am and I want to play in the CIS cluster and I want to keep everything here.
Okay. What about pay models and paywalls with CIS regions?
So I think it was up to the player to decide, like, if they wanted to play in the CIS, they needed to have ways and means to pay and play in CIS.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't want to play and pay in CIS and they want to move to the European cluster, it's their conscious choice that if I'm going to move, I will need to figure out a way to pay or purchase somehow in European cluster.
In European cluster, okay. We can talk a little bit more about, I mean, you have a little bit of presentations about responsibilities and gaming. Can you show us maybe what did you...
Sorry, about specifically about?
Specifically about, I noticed one slide of responsibilities in business and in gaming. Okay, we can touch. Yes, we can talk about collaborations, for example. We'll come back to that. Wargaming did a lot of collaborations, specifically World of Tanks, more than World of Warships. But you can talk more about World of Warships, about collaborations with history, with famous people. Nowadays, we have, at the moment, your campaign is running on Schwarzenegger and Mila Jovovich.
Yes.
Can you explain to us how does this work in World of Warships and in Wargaming in general?
Well, we understand that our players have different tastes and different, let's say, motivations to play the game, and it's always good whenever we tie up with a big brand or with big face that they relate to. And if you look at this slide, for example, you can see like there all the relatable faces that are somehow connected with the game itself, or somehow with the age demography that we are talking about. So you can see, like, there is Buffon there,
Mm-hmm.
and then there are all these possible people that we could think that are relatable with our audience. Then we have brands themselves. For example, Transformers, for our player base, it gives them that warm, fuzzy feeling about, what Transformers. They know because they kind of grew up with it in certain countries. And so it's something that they relate to really well. We collaborated with Godzilla vs. Kong because the movie was just out, and we knew that if we can release some content that relates to the movie and still somehow connected to the game, it goes well, and it was really good collaboration in that way. We did a historical campaign with Dunkirk, which is the evacuation during the World War II, how a lot of sailors and soldiers were evacuated from Dunkirk. So we created this scenario in the game, which allowed you.
You made a map.
Yeah, it was a whole map where you had to go and rescue your compatriots and bring them back, while avoiding the mines and while avoiding the enemy ships and enemy traps.
Okay, are the mines a new implementation in World of Warships? I don't recall having mines.
We implemented
specifically made for this.
Yes,
yeah?
Yes.
Is that something that you're going to implement? Maybe?
Maybe.
Yeah, because the newest additions were submarines, if I'm correct?
We added submarines a few months ago, and we have a new mode where we are testing mines again. So we'll see if we can bring the mines to game.
How is that? How do you do that? Like, well, that's a game-changing mechanism, submarine. How do you work around that kind of game-changing implementation of something in your game mechanics, first of all?
So we know that it's a big change for our game. So we tested this new class of submarines for 2 years, while without releasing it. So we started to release it on our open public test servers. Then we introduced it just as a special event. Then we kept it in a special format in the game. We need to make sure that it was balanced, because we know that it's a class that can have a big impact on the gameplay. So it took us 2 years to fully introduce this line into the game.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't be me if I wouldn't ask you this regarding esports and business in esports. World of Tanks had I would say, a successful esport history. What about World of Warships? Do you see any kind of future for warships, even though people say it's a slower game? I mean, World of Tanks is already a little bit slower game for us or older people. What about World of Warships, which is even slower?
We have a very thriving competitive scene called King of the Sea. It's 15th iteration in a month. In a month time, it's super competitive. It's by clans. It's the what you call pinnacle of our the esport competitive community when it comes together, and it's run by the community and us. So it's not just our tournament. We have cash prize for that. It's like $50,000 distributed among the winners, and we broadcast it on Twitch and YouTube, and it gets lots of views. We broadcast it over like a proper esports, like it's done on a specific days. Then there are finals on a weekend, and there are international finals on the on a weekend. We do it every 6 months or twice a year, and we're still trying to grow it. We haven't. It's still. I mean, we haven't lost focus on it.
What is the community's feedback?
They love it because it shows the top of the top of the top and how they play the game, and it's inspiring for some because they see like how the best professionals do it, and at the same time they fall in love with some of the ships they haven't played for some time, and there's like, I want to play this ship because these guys are playing the same way. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Is it a win for you? I mean, I know that you came to Wargaming first as a player before upgrading yourself to Chief Global Operations. How do you look on it? You learn a lot from those kind of players?
Yes, it's important and inspiring because we know that the players who play this competitive mode are one of the most important segments of our players. We know that they have a huge influence on our player base, so we need to make sure that they are satisfied and happy with making sure that we have enough competitive elements in the game, and King of the Sea is one of those.
What about, okay, so the most successful product of Wargaming is World of Tanks. Okay. That was the first original one. I don't know, back in 2009 or 2010 it started as a beta. Then World of Warplanes came out, and then World of Warships came out. So World of Warships is just behind World of Tanks. What about World of Warplanes? Why didn't it grab the momentum of two other games? Is it because, I don't know, in my eyes, maybe because there were already a lot of games in World of Warplanes warfare, or because tanks and ships are kind of original. Your game mechanics are original, especially, well, I would say more warships than tanks. What's with World of Warplanes?
I honestly don't know. I think it's a combination of a lot of factors. Probably it could be a combination of the moment to moment, or as you said, like not super original. I actually don't know like why. We should ask our players, and there is no clear answer.
Yeah, I just want to mention to the audience that you can ask questions to our dear guest. If you have any questions, any interests, you can just pull up your hands. We're going to bring a mic to you. Think about it. We're going to talk. We're going to talk more about gaming and business in gaming, which is the main theme. So let's come back a little bit to Belgrade and Warsaw. Do you see maybe Wargaming opening more offices here in this kind of region?
I cannot say yes or no because we are.
I'm asking because you're probably you have a load of applications. because Wargaming is a really big name in the game industry, and you just said like in 6 months, in 4 months, you already have almost 500 employees. Do you think maybe more about expanding in this region, or?
It depends. Right now, our focus is to make sure that we get the basics right in Belgrade. Mm-hmm. The whole emphasis is to make sure that that office is set up to deliver as I mentioned, we are planning 6 months, 12 months, 18 months in advance. So we want to make sure that this office is first set up to deliver next 18 months. Once we are sure that it's there and we have all the services, all the talent, all the connections possible, then we can think about growth in different regions. But right now our focus is on this office. And of course, making sure that people who are relocated from conflict regions have a working place in Warsaw or Vilnius. So this is where our focus and concentrations are.
When you come to the office, like not your home-based office, like when you go on a trip to one of the offices in the world, how do you work with your team, with your people? How do you engage in team buildings, in situations where you need to resolve some issues that are at hand, or stuff like that? Or maybe now in these harder times, what I would put it, how do you approach your co-workers, colleagues, your team?
I would say, like, luckily for us, we speak one language, which is gaming, which unites us. It's what a lot of people are passionate about. So whenever you have certain issues or disagreements, you can always pinpoint to the fact that we are making this game for our players. Mm-hmm. And I'll show you this. This is a great way to diffuse any issues or to actually focus and concentrate people's attention, because if we are not able to agree on things that affect our players, then it's something that is going against what our mission statement is. Mm-hmm. So that's how we work around these issues. Okay. And it's a language spoken across all the 16 offices that we have in the world, and everybody knows the mission there.
Mm-hmm. Do you have anything to add to this panel, to this theme, from your presentation? Maybe something to some keynote that you want to add to the audience. I don't want to catch you off guard.
No, it's fine. I think all I can say is that you hear a lot about mergers and acquisitions in this sphere in businesses. What we did last year was complete opposite, which was a division. And I could talk about, we could write a book about how to do a division now, because there are not many companies that do this. But we could say that make sure that you first answer the question and answer it honestly about what comes first, the business or people. Can business survive without people? Can people survive without business? If you're able to answer this question, you will be able to solve the puzzle. And I think that's what we did. We found the absolute balance that is required so that there is a sustainability in the business, but at the same time, our employees are protected, our employees are taken care of, because without them, there is no business. But they also understand that if there is no business, there is nothing. So it's something that we did, and I'm very proud that we did it the way we did, even though we don't speak about it. I'm happy that I can speak about it freely here, because we relocated about 500 people from Kiev in a matter of weeks.
Days.
We mobilized so many of our internal resources. We banned travel for all the normal employees and focused all our travel resources to make sure that people are evacuated as soon as possible. We rented buses, we rented accommodation for families. I can tell you a fun fact. When we were relocating people from conflict regions to Serbia, they were coming in waves. And we asked, like, why can't we just move them all in one go, in a one big plane? And the answer was that dogs and cats. As in, first plane that came in was just with cats. And the second plane that came was just in dogs. We moved 16 cats and 21 dogs. So you see, these are all things that we had to take care of. It came as a surprise, like, because, you know, when you're traveling normally, you don't think about this. But when you talk about moving people in a mass with family and kids and their pets, it becomes complicated really fast.
Yeah, Wargaming takes care of their own people.
Absolutely. We don't leave our behind.
Yeah, very nice to hear that. Dear audience, do you have some kind of questions for our dear guest here? Everything, yeah, there is one. Excuse me, can someone give him a mic? Thank you.
Yeah. I have one question on the account migration you were talking about earlier. How many players actually decided to switch regions or stay in the original region or cluster they were in before?
Well, I can't give you the number because that discloses
Yeah,
the player base.
Was it surprising that was it fairly balanced? Was a larger shift towards one region or the other?
I think it went as expected. A lot of players chose to stay in CIS states, and some of them decided to move to the European cluster. You have to understand that they're playing the game for years, and they have their clans, their divisions, their family playing. So migrating them is a bigger problem. So it's a cultural phenomena in CIS. Everybody knows about it. So they rather stay there and play with the people that they used to play for many, many years.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more.
Hi. Could you just pick out, in your opinion, the best collaboration and the example of that with a museum? That I want to know more about that. Thanks.
Thank you.
That's a bunch of. It's like picking your favorite child, which is not possible. But like right now, I can ask a question and then I will answer the question to myself. How many games do you know that exist on an actual vessel or a naval ship in the world? There is none, I can tell you. On HMS Belfast, which is in the Thames in London River, we have our own dedicated gaming area, which is inside the ship itself, which is a historical jewel for United Kingdom's Navy. And we have that collaboration with them for almost 2 years now. And we plan to expand it to other, let's say, models. But that's by far one of the most favorite one and one of the most interesting ones that we have.
A follow-up, please. Mostly it was Wargaming approaching the museums or vice versa?
It's mutual because it has to be two-way. Sometimes we have to give an exposure to the museums to tell them what they can do. Sometimes the museum themselves come and say, like, look, that museum is doing this. Can we do something similar in our museum? So it goes like a two-way street.
One more.
Yeah, hi. Well, since we have an elephant in the room, I have to ask the question. So, since the war broke out in Ukraine, do you see there a correlation between the number of players and the number of movements going on in the field? So, do you see the increase of the number of the players of the Wargaming? Since I know that you will not change the name of the company to the Conflict Gaming, your company is Wargaming. So, do you see the correlation between those things?
The only correlation I can say that we had in COVID, when a lot of players were just staying at home and had nothing to do, and we had a huge spike. But since the conflict broke out, we never marketed as such towards conflict, so we didn't see any difference.
Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Rajeev Girdhar. Can I get a round of applause?